last time you were here? What has been going on? Talk to us about the birth of the Authentic Messenger.
So yeah, the last time that I was a guest, I had been about 2 years deep into having my podcast, the Nugichi podcast. Amazing opportunity, but I also in that moment was starting to feel drained about podcasting. And I really was on the brink of trying to decide whether or not this was something that I wanted to continue. Not because I didn't think it was a good idea, but again, it was this thing that was consuming so much of my time. And, they also say when you get to about 2 or 3 years in a project, you start questioning, like, where are we going? Are we going left? Are we going right? Are we going up? Are we going down?
Mm-hmm.
So it was around that time that I actually was just, again, back in that exploration phase of what do I want to do? And this person who I had met earlier in the year sort of revealed to me in a moment that they thought I would be great in PR. And I looked at them and said, what? Which this story sounds so familiar because it was the same thing
Yep.
that led me to podcasting. Somebody said, you should. And I said, huh? And then I went down the rabbit hole. And I went down the rabbit hole of what is PR and what did he mean by that? And, maybe this is a culmination of all of my talents and skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so that ended up being true. Like I literally was like in PR 101 for like a whole year, listening to podcasts, looking at articles, just really diving into what it is. And when I think about who I am and why I even started the podcast, someone who loves networking, someone who is very relationship driven,
Yep.
someone who loves connecting the dots, someone who loves being your number one hype man, it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I am someone who respects different trades, it was a long time before I would even tell people that I was doing it, but I had been doing it. Now it'd be like 2 years, but I really didn't say nothing until like 1 year ago.
When you mentioned that somebody told you that, I was like, oh yeah, because she's all about relationships and connections and just like having that authentic community with people and building those connections with people. And absolutely. I mean, you're much more knowledgeable in this than me, and you're going to educate us on this. But I feel like PR is so much about helping to build those connections between the person and the press or whoever it is. So I mean, I literally can't think of a more perfect person to be in the PR world. So as the authentic messenger, who do you help? Who do you support?
I think as I've gone along, I realized kind of like where the sweet spot of who I want to help is. And that really resides with people who are entrepreneurs looking to go on to the next level of what they're doing. They've been doing this thing by themselves, pushing, grinding, but they don't really have the capacity to even try to manage what PR could be. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they're getting to a point where they're getting more inquiries, they're getting more opportunities, and they need help managing that side of what they're doing. So entrepreneurs is definitely one of my favorite areas. The second space that I want to work with is like small business. So there are people and businesses out there, again, who are looking to build teams of people to help them go to that next level. So that's another area. And then lastly, nonprofits. Okay. I think nonprofits is pretty much a large part of what I do. They have a cause that they're trying to push, and they need to define what that strategy looks like. In all of the umbrella of small business, entrepreneur, nonprofits, there's Black business. Mm-hmm. And really, ultimately, I had been seeing this problem since I started the podcast. There's so many people doing amazing things, but they just need an opportunity to share that, or they need somebody to advocate for them to share those things.
So help us understand what PR is and what it helps those groups of people achieve. Like with PR, they can do what? How does it help them take their business to the next level?
PR, also known as public relations, mm-hmm. what I like to think of as a public reputation, is really how you are building your brownie points, your good rapport with the general public and the media. Okay. So a lot of people think that PR and marketing are one and the same, and they're first cousins. They work together all the time, and they help you to push your strategy forward that ultimately will help you to do what? Make more money in your business, build more clientele, and be working in your lane of genius. PR marketing are set up like this. Marketing is how you get prospects in the door, and your PR strategy is how you keep them in the door. So marketing to get them in the door, you're using ads, you're using sales strategies, you're doing targeted lead generation. And then your PR is like all the things that help you to build more credibility and visibility. So I've already, used the ad to pique Megan's interest, but then Megan might go and search my business and see that Forbes wrote about me. And Forbes, we all know to be a top publication that highlights some of the best of the best. So then to Megan or to whoever is reading that, they're like, oh, like Forbes said it.
She's legit. You
She's
have that
legit.
social proof.
Absolutely. You have that social proof. And then, we have so many businesses that are growing in the United States, right? Especially Black businesses. We're growing at exponential rates. And so when people, choose something as simple as a bar of soap, you have to go, well, which one do I want? And people are more drawn to brands and businesses that they feel a connection with. So how do you build those connections? You do it with like PR strategies, getting your story out there, making sure people know exactly what you stand for, and then just making sure that you're building a relationship with other people who can say they're great and it's just not coming from you.
So visibility was one of the words that you mentioned that stood out. And you provided a great example of, say this company is in Forbes, you can see that this very authoritative, legitimate source has promoted and written about, this company. So that adds some weight, to the company. What are some other examples of visibility promoting activities that you like help your clients achieve through PR?
So there's really a large array of things that people can be doing. And I actually made this matrix up of where all those opportunities could lie. But for the bulk of them and what we know media. So being featured in magazines, newspapers, television, podcasts, radio shows. All of those things are some of the most prominent media interactions that you can get and, help you to move your message forward. One thing that people think also is like PR has to be on the most grandest national scale. But really, there's a lot of opportunities and low-hanging fruit that reside right on your local platforms. Why? Because especially if you're a local business, sometimes your neighbor doesn't know what you do.
Yeah.
We don't even think about something as simple as that. So it's always about making sure that the right people know about what you do. And if you tell the story right, it's even if that person is not your target audience, then that person at least knows who you serve and they can tell whoever needs that. Have you ever been in a place where you're like,
Definitely.
no, I think this would be so great for you.
Yeah. I don't need it, but I know someone who does.
But I know someone who does. And so that's really the biggest power of PR. I always say like this, your PR is only as strong as your brand story. And that's what makes you stand out amongst the people who reside in your industry. So think about some of the brands that you know and love. You're not necessarily always connected to them just because their product is great, but you might know that, the Lip Bar is also owned by Delta, who was on Shark Tank, who, we know that she's been giving back to different organizations. She promotes other Black women in her business. And so all of those things make me more drawn to her and make me go, get the Lip Bar. Like, it's amazing. So those are some of the things that you want to do. Media, all of those things falling under that umbrella. But PR is also like, okay, really making sure that story stands out. So when businesses want to build more social equity into their industries, they got to let their community know what they're about. So PR might also look like collaborating with nonprofits or other organizations that sort of align with the missions that you have. So for instance, I know like in my business, education has always been super important to me. One of my values is talking about having the audacity to do what it is that you want to do and going after those opportunities. So one big part of my future business will be to have internships. Why? Because I struggled for a long time trying to get an internship or a job in PR, and I don't want the next person behind me to feel that way. And so what does that do? That lets people know, oh, the business is bigger than her.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's not rocket science with PR. It's just about having intentionality and strategy behind what it is that you're doing, so that people know where you stand, how you stand, and what it is that you want them to know you for.
I listened to this podcast called Biz Chicks. The host, Natalie Ekdahl, she's not a PR person or anything. She's just a general business consultant, but she talks a lot about visibility building strategies. And one thing she mentions often is, especially for local business owners, is to actually like go out in your local community. Like everything, all the connections you're trying to make don't have to be online. There's still this thing called like real life. Maybe right now there's not, but in general, there is still this thing called real life, and you can, go to your chamber of commerce and get active there and do some speaking events to people who are actually in your community. To your point that you mentioned about finding businesses that are sort of aligned or adjacent to what you do, she provides this example of like this woman who teaches dance classes and actually goes to like her local children's dentist office during off times to offer classes there. So that collaboration that you were alluding to, and that visibility, but not being so confined to I have to do this online, I have to get these followers. So are in-person opportunities something that you also kind of help support your clients with, if that's relevant for them?
That's a huge part. So really, PR also alludes to you wanting to be maybe like authoritative in your lane. And that's why I talk about, maybe you have been doing something for so long, like you are an expert, but nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have been doing this for so long, and you like this little corner of the earth knows, but you know that there are gaps of information across this sector, and you can feel them.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is, looking for speaking opportunities, whether that's at conferences right now, whether that's like being on webinars, whether that's like creating your own speaking opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like creating your own conferences, creating your own
Virtual
events.
summits. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because we know ultimately a business, their number one goal is to make money,
Mm-hmm.
right? But PR is saying we have to make a connection with those around us. And how do we do that besides always just making a transaction for a sale? This company that they actually do copywriting and they do design. They had this booth and they were allowing people to take pictures with their mascot. And then they had an event where they were like, hey, we're going to make another transaction with you that doesn't cost you any money. We're going to bring in industry experts who are women to just lift up this community and let them know, like, we support women in our businesses, in our company also. So it's like, I've never bought anything from them, but I scream from the top of every building that I go in and tell them, you should go and work with Design Pickle because they're amazing. So yeah, it's about all of those different things. Is how we spend the dollars to make sure that people are attracted to us. But PR is like all the other things that we do to make sure that people love us and our reputation still stands clear. And then on the other side, there's bad PR too. Okay. I know people say there's no such thing as bad PR, but really, like, we've seen some bad PR with some people, especially lately over the last couple of weeks, where people are saying things and then they have this flood of like, why did you say that? Now there's all this attention because there are media outlets who are going to be like, look what so-and-so said today. And those things are true. And so then PR also becomes crisis management, where you're trying to help simmer a situation down and get somebody's reputation back to where it needs to be. So steering that conversation.
Let's talk about the story element for a minute, because for me, I think this is one of the key elements of PR that is very related to content, which is what this series is all about. So maybe we can start this conversation by talking about like how your story, how do you pull out a client's story in order to make it palatable or suitable for a PR campaign? Like, how does that work?
So I think before anybody starts any campaign, everybody, lottie dottie, every business owner has their own story that they have about why they got started, right? And that one story is probably going to be the branch in which like all the other stories flow from.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, to be quite honest, I've always been kind of like a consumer. So I have to consume all the ways you've probably already told the story. I'll ask you the same questions over and over again just to make sure that you didn't you didn't leave anything out, because I think we tend to like forget really key details sometimes when we tell stories to people. So it's a lot of extraction that comes out of it, and I don't think it's anything that anybody can do in a day. So that's the other thing about PR. The P in PR is for patience because all of this takes time. And I think one of the most underrated tools that we learned probably in like the 3rd or the 4th grade was who, what, when, where, and why, and how. And if you can answer all of those, you have a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times people are like totally just, they don't know what to say or how to say it, but really just start there. And from those simple points about like who you are and who you serve, what do you do? How do you do it? Why do you do it? You can really put together your story. And again, the other huge part about PR is your PR is only as strong as your story, your branding, and your marketing. Mm-hmm. So before any business owner looks to start like hiring somebody in the PR, they want to make sure that their branding and their marketing is on point. Because I come in as a PR person and I'm looking at all of those elements, and if they don't line up, then that's where we have to start first anyway. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure that you say you're a business about for adults, and then you're not using like kid colors and attracting kids to your business. It's simple things like that in your branding you have to be really precise about. Mm-hmm. I think we underestimate how powerful branding is off top. And so a lot of PR is just making sure that when we say something here, it matches up in alignment with what we said here. Gotcha. So that's a really, 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 really important key. And I almost wouldn't work with anybody if we didn't have your branding intact.
That's what I was going to say, like, as far as who you work with. So do they have to have all 3 of those components, the brand? I know you probably help flesh out the story, but at least like some idea of the story, the brand, and the marketing. Do they need to have pretty much like all that on lock for you to step in and support them with PR, or do you help them get any of those elements together?
Yeah, I think before we could even start to push out PR and PR campaigns that you have, those things have to be done first. And so some PR people will say, hey, let's work on this first before we even go any further. And I think that's where I am too. When I started doing PR and I thought that people had their stuff together and I realized that they didn't, I started getting frustrated because I cannot start promoting you to media if you don't have a high res headshot. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing they're going to ask for. And think about how many business owners we see, they don't have that, right? So it's like simple things like that. Having a bio ready to go. Like if I say to the news people, like they want to have you, like we have to always have those things ready to go. So I started something called a PR ready checklist. Essentially me and my clients, we work through that first just to make sure that we have everything intact. And I typically will start kind of like pre-screening that before we even start working together. So we know exactly what needs to be done. Because people, when they work with a PR person, they want to like start and jump head first into the good stuff, right? But it's like, I have bad news. I have to tell you, all of this stuff needs to be ready first, because otherwise we won't get that far. So
yeah, we don't get far, like, and nothing we can do from here is going to be effective. Like I have to have those same conversations with my content marketing clients, because like you, when I initially started, I assumed if you are a health company and you're in business and you're doing pretty well, then that means you know who your audience is, you know who you're
Mm,
serving, you know what content formats you want to, you have all this stuff down. They don't. They don't know. And then they come bring somebody in who's supposed to help them with marketing, and it's like the foundation of marketing is identifying your audience. So we
absolutely.
have to start here at the foundation before we can create content, because otherwise, who are we creating content for?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I think that is a thing that most people, especially again, the target audience that I want to work with, we just have not had enough time to just sit down and really dive into those fine details. Like, honestly, we sometimes think we know our audiences, but we have no idea. Who said
Mm-hmm.
that? Like MTV True Life. We think we know, but we have no idea. Um, for a long time, I was thinking like, only Black people listen to my podcast. It's for young melanated professionals, young people. And then I like really dove in to see like who was listening. And they were like people who were over 35. They're not young professionals. You know, there was some people who were not Black people who were listening to the podcast and still finding value in it. That doesn't mean that they're not a part of the audience that I was targeting, right? But sometimes, you know, like you really need to know your audience. Like that is how these bigger corporations have these ad campaigns and stuff, and you're like, they're talking exactly to me.
Yep. Because they know that they're intentionally talking exactly to you, because all the market research they did helped them to figure out who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what type of words you use, how
Yep.
you feel about certain things. All of those things is so granular. They're
Yes.
intentionally talking to you very specifically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all of, like I said, this world of PR really overlaps largely with marketing and branding. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how can we move forward and make sure that we are targeting the right media outlets? How do we move forward and know exactly what kind of campaigns we need to run to help, you know, boost your visibility and credibility if we don't know, you know, who you serve and how you serve them? Another really big thing that I think enough people don't take enough time to do is surely you need to know like all of those things that we just talked about, but they don't know what their competitors are doing. And that's such a large area of opportunity because what they're not doing, you could be doing. Or we get, you know, we freeze up like Issa Rae on Insecure and we don't know what to tell people because we don't know how we stand up in the industry. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like if I came out with a new Coke bottle, I need to know like what Coke and Pepsi is doing that I could be doing differently, you know? And so that helps consumers, that helps the media, that helps all of these other people understand why you over somebody else. Why should I
Right.
build this connection with you? And for some people it works and it sticks. Like there's a million other lip companies that I could have used, but I chose this one. Why? Because I felt way more connected to their story and the things that they do, and you know, it makes a huge difference.
Maybe in your experience, when you are building these relationships with people in media or people who can help your clients, do you think they look at their content to see how that consistency flows through as well? Like, is that something important that you feel like your clients have to focus on, or are they kind of able to achieve whatever business goals they've set through PR without necessarily having that like foundational content, whether it's, video, written, audio, whatever?
I think it only helps, right? There's a saying that nobody wants to be like the first to write about you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so like if I were to go to Forbes and Forbes say they heard me say this incredible pitch about a person, what do you think they're going to do first? They're going to double, triple check what
Yep.
you just said. And if they can't double, triple check what you just said accurately, it might raise a red flag in their head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's why again strategy around PR could be as simple as I know all these local outlets. Let me build up my social and online credibility with them so that when I do try to, you know, get to the Black enterprises and the Forbes magazines and the, you know, Essence, that I'm able to sort of prove myself in that way already where, other people have already helped tell my story. I also think it's vitally important that you don't wait on anybody to tell your story,
Preach.
because another really big part of the media and why PR people are important is there's a lot of media who gets the story wrong. That is why I started a podcast, because I hated the way that the media was portraying, you know, you and I like millennials, millennials this, millennials that. Like, we're changing the world, and all y'all could think about is like, we want avocado toast. Like, I don't even get that.
Right.
I seen a post on that the other day. Like, y'all have totally got us confused.
Yeah.
Like, so it's up to us to be able to tell those stories too. And you can do that through content. I think one of the biggest things that people have seen and have kind of picked up on is like, you might get all of these new followers who simply don't know what you do. They might like the images that they have seen, right? But they have no idea what you do for real.
Yeah.
So you might see somebody go, hey y'all, what's up, all my new followers? My name is Megan, and I'm the host of a podcast, and it's called Lazy Millennial, and it has, over 40 episodes, and I talk to people all across the globe. I think it's something that you want to get hooked onto. I have a blog that supplements it. So it's about, again, you have to kind of like make those connections and touch points all the time. I think we assume people know a lot about us, but
yeah. And we assume that it's almost like a narcissistic thing where we assume that if we said something one time, everybody heard it. And so we feel some type of way about saying it again, because it's like, oh, they already heard me say this. Am I repeating myself? It's like, bruh, 80% of these people probably did not hear you say it the first time, and 15% of them forgot. So you have to continue to repeat your message, because I think the statistic is like it takes
seven
times of repeating the same message for it to stick. So that goes back to like, having that who, what, when, where, why, that story, and not being afraid to like repeat it, not the same way all the time, but to kind of like make sure that you're constantly putting that out there.
Absolutely. I saw another study in the book that I'm reading called Guerrilla Marketing. And guerrilla marketing, I think, it takes something like 16 times to kind of like change somebody's mind about whether or not they want to make a decision with you. And that's a lot of times. And so, again, to your point, we throw the story out there. You have one post, one media outlet feature you, but repetition is the thing that helps you to keep moving that train forward, and so I think like that's super important. Even if I were featured on Essence right now, it's triple important for me to go ahead and also share it, not just because they did it right, but because it needs to come from me. It needs to come from them. It needs to come from all of these different ways. And then I have other people who will help share it. So repetition and being able to share something a multitude of different ways and different angles also helps the right people connect with, what is happening. I'm saying that I'm featured in Essence means that people who don't read Essence to see it also still know what's happening. And so it really just, your story, you can never tell it too many times, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that there are any business owners who are not in a position to like need to jump into PR right now? Like if they have, their brand down, their story, their marketing, do you think there are still maybe any situations where PR is inappropriate? I mean, I can't think of any, but you're the expert, so I'm just wondering.
No, I don't think so. I think that when you start a business, a lot of us, we started out of necessity to make money and to kind of really jump in. But I think if you can pause for a moment, just like you would for branding and marketing, or you should be thinking about PR. How do you want to be perceived? Where do you want to be featured eventually in the future once you really start moving forward? So really you can never be too early on it, but I do know that PR is an investment. So either you're going to invest in somebody to do it for you, or you're going to invest in somebody to do it in-house for you. Either way, you probably want somebody to manage that, because look, some people go to bed, they post a post. Like, one day this is going to happen to you and me. We're going to make a post, We're gonna go to sleep. We're gonna wake up and we're gonna be viral. You're gonna wake up and you're gonna have emails and messages, and what you said just went viral. And you still got
Knock
a
on wood,
business.
it better be for something good.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
gonna
gonna
have
be
to call up my
something.
reputation management PR specialist, Keiona.
Absolutely. But that happens to people all the time. What do I say next? What do I do next? Right now is even a more perfect opportunity because in the age of Black Lives Matter, many corporations and media outlets have just woken up to understand that Black businesses are here, right? They want to feature brands and they want to feature businesses, which is great, but some of these people are not ready. Case in point, there was a local story told by a national outlet here in Arizona. The outlet is not here, but the story was here. The outlet got the headline wrong, and it appeared to sound like the business was closed. The business is open. I made one simple post on Instagram and had multiple people text me and say, "Are they open?" Because they had seen that video and that headline, and the media got it wrong. PR people could come in and say, "That's not right." Classic person, Beyonce. Nothing has really stayed on the internet more than 5 seconds that has been negative about Beyonce. Why? Because her PR lady don't play. Yvette Noel Shores do not play about Beyonce's reputation, right? And so it's about managing all of those things to make sure that they all, the whole story stays the same. And even when people have bad things happen, what can we do positive to turn this situation around is really, really important.
I guess maybe to like close us out, you share with me your document that kind of helps someone pull out their brand story.
Yes.
Would you mind kind of giving like an overview of what that document is and maybe walking us through it? So hopefully I can share it with my listeners if you're cool with that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay,
Because I want people's stories to be told and told the right way. And I think a lot of us get hung up. When we are working on something for ourselves, we just panic. Many of us cannot talk about ourselves or what we do. We just do it and we just want to keep doing it. But we really got to take that time to make sure that we can articulate that well. So this document that I created is an opportunity for people to just really give somebody what you do and really give it to them in a way that helps them understand if it's for them or if it's not for them. And if it's not for them, who it would be for. Mm-hmm. So it's really kind of like 4 areas that you can, talk about. And here's the spoiler alert. If you go to my website, it is the exact format that I used for my website.
So if you got a case study right there, guys.
Case study right there. So the first thing that you want to do in opening up that brand story is tell your audience who you are to them. I'm Keiona, the authentic messenger, your PR and marketing strategist. Hey, I'm Megan, host of Lazy Millennial, owner of Rose Creative. And really it's about making sure that it's clear about what you do and how you serve them, right? And so you can start off by saying, we are the blank for whoever also. So that doesn't make sense when I said it that way, but we are the PR marketing strategists for small businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits. Mm-hmm. So take that a step further and let the audience know who it is that you're talking to. So then the next part of that is identifying the pain points that the audience has that you are looking to solve for them. Hey, I know exactly what it's like to not be able to write copy in 5 minutes or less. Usually it takes me about 2 weeks, but I have somehow came up with this formula that helps me to get it done in 2 days, So you're going to identify their pain points, the thing that ultimately you're helping them to solve, but also kind of like, what are your insights on how you will help solve that problem for them? So just letting them know like, hey, I have come up with this strategy. I have come up with this formula. I have come up with these different resources that will help you to now eliminate some of the pain points that I mentioned. So then like the third part is how you actually solve it for this audience. So what's your approach, your special sauce, your unique experience that you're bringing to the table. So Megan, I bring a doctorate of pharmacy. I bring years of working with large organizations like the CDC, you know, that help give me insight into this industry. And that's why you should choose me, because I bring those very special talents to this trade. Um, and then again, taking it a step further and saying like, what makes you different from competitors? So, you know, whether it's the cost, whether it's, you know, we give everybody a Happy Meal toy to go with with everything. Like those are things that separate McDonald's from other people. Like Happy Meal toys set a standard.
The other two
So
can't compete. And I know if we weren't going to McDonald's, I didn't want that toy.
absolutely. So what is making you stand out from the competitors, and also that your audience would appreciate? So that is specifically called your unique value proposition or positioning statement. And that is the thing that might take some time for you to do some research. So if you're listening out there, pick 3 people in your industry and dissect everything they do and find out every way that you're different from them and be able to articulate that. And then lastly, the fourth part would be, you know, telling your audience why you care. I think that is, again, the big part, the why. I care about being a PR person because I watched Black businesses suffer and not be able to have that media exposure that I knew they could have, you know, or I have read terrible copy on the internet that I know has only made businesses go backwards and not help them move forward. So sharing that why, sharing what is your ultimate goal and helping them is going to be super important. And again, values in our lives as well as in our businesses is important to have. Whether you scream them from the mountaintop every day, you can absolutely let people know who you are and what you stand for. So for me, my 3 values are authenticity, alignment, and audacity. And in everything that I create with my business, those things are going to be present. And so letting people know that up front lets them know, hey, I like her. I want to work with her. Or, you know what? Audacious. I ain't really about that life. I'm moving on.
That's a really good point. And to take that a step further, I think not all the time, but sometimes those 3 value statements can be a part of your UVP or that thing that sets you apart. Because, and it took me, what it's been like 2.5 years to figure this out, but part of my position in the market as a healthcare copywriting company is making sure that the content we create is culturally relevant. And
Yes.
so once I identified that, which was, I kid you not, like 2 months ago, and things have taken off so much since then, because now I'm able to put that in all of my messaging and people are automatically attracted to it or pushed away from it. So I've had so many people reach out, especially now, like you're saying, in time of Black Lives Matter, when corporations are like, oh, I guess cultural relevance is important. Then it's like, you know, oh, well, can you come in and talk to us about this? Or can you come work on this? So it's okay if your values or your position pushes some people away. It should. It needs to, when someone looks at what you are about, they need to either be like, yes, this is for me, or no, this is not for me. It should be no gray area.
Absolutely. There should be no gray area. And I know that you are a student of services that sell with Jerisha Hawk, but Jerisha Hawk has been so instrumental in me kind of like refining that message in my message to other people, letting them know like it is absolutely okay for your message to be so specific that those who know it's not for them go, all right, I'm out. Because you don't want to spend time, especially when we have services, right? Where it requires us to kind of put our hands in somebody else's business sometimes and really have to work with them on a scale of like, I need to think for you sometimes and make decisions that align. And if we don't align and if it doesn't make sense, then we're wasting time. We're setting ourselves up for failure.
For anybody.
It's never good for anybody, I promise. And I think we grow through those kind of learning experiences.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, I think everybody should be thinking about PR and their reputation and their branding and marketing strategy, but it is something that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
It took me, and I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to like really flesh out what the authentic messenger is and what it isn't. I think I've gotten it close, but it will always be a process of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see now all of these different business owners who are like, I specifically work with women of faith. No brainer. Women, faith, you don't have them, I'm not for you.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare owners who need cultural competence, come here. This is where you want to be. Those who don't have a need for that, they move on to the next person.
Yep.
And it just makes both sides happy. One conversation that we've had on Lazy Millennial was, how do we make sure that our lives align with things that we love,
Mm-hmm.
right? And things that, bring us joy. And one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself is, again, flesh out who it is you want to work with and make sure that you're attracting them. And anybody else, I implore upon you to just keep fleshing. And then also, get a PR person eventually to help you do that.
And to like, in addition to thinking about who you want to work with, sometimes maybe you don't know, but you know who you don't want to work with. So making sure that you're like building a business that doesn't require you to have to work with those kind of people. Because there were some times when I was like, oh, this is a group of people that could use these services. Yes, they could use these services, but do I want to work with them? No, I don't. So
correct.
That's not something that's going to be beneficial. But yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And I think the way that you've laid out this brand story document is genius. It makes it very simple to kind of ask yourselves these questions that are written here and then reflect on them.
You better start working on your brand and who you are first. It's almost like, I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody until I know like I am whole and I know who I am. It really translates the same way. And so some of the most basic branding things are like, what is your tagline? What is your voice? How are you communicating what you're doing? Are you doing it in a unique way? Your logo. I think a lot of people don't think their logo speaks, as loudly as it does, but sometimes it does, and making sure that it aligns with what it is that you're doing and who you're doing it for. So a lot of these things will take an investment on your part, right? Or there's some easy ways to get around it. Like a lot of people make their logos on Canva. I'm not against it.
Both of my logos are from Canva.
Yeah, I'm not knocking the hustle because mine are too. But if you're gonna go on there and make a cartoon logo, then I implore upon you to find somebody, anybody, an intern, a niece, a nephew, to help you to make sure that when you announce yourself to the world, it makes sense. And it's okay that it's not super perfect. It just needs to make sense. Because what is going to happen as we grow older, as my first episode versus this episode, we all evolve. We all keep growing, and that's okay. That's actually the best part of life, is like we don't stay the same. So when you start, putting your social media out there, I implore upon you to focus on a few. Don't go and get Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn,
Pinterest,
Snapchat, Pinterest, if you're not going to make sure that you're building community out there on them. And then when you do make them, make sure they all look the same, so that when I Google you and I go and look at one, I'm not confused about, am I on the right page?
Yeah. Is this the same person, or is this a different, the authentic messenger?
Absolutely. Those are some of the things that instantly people think about. And I did a little random kind of case study. Didn't even know it was going to be a case study. I asked on Facebook one day for everybody to drop their favorite children's book authors, right? And I'm a PR person. I know how to use Google up, down, backwards, and around. So I couldn't find some of those people. I couldn't find anything about their books. I found books with no authors really linked to them, no bios, no contacts. So make sure that you're visible by all the ways that you can make yourself visible.
Mm-hmm.
Have a website. People need to be able to find you. You know, right now, again, people have gone, where are all the Black businesses? You better believe that they're Googling Black businesses in my area, Black copywriters in my area. If you cannot be found, whose fault is it? So just make sure that what you can do, you've done before you make the launch, instead of just like, making a name on Twitter and then you find out, oh, it's not even available on Instagram. So now I gotta like figure out a new name for my business. Oh yeah, I forgot. Like somebody actually has this business name. So now you have to go all the way through this cycle.
Yeah.
So just kind of like really think about all of those branded elements first and foremost.
Okay, super important. Very concrete things that you can do right now. Keiona, thank you so much for dropping back by the podcast. I really appreciate you. How can people follow you on social through the Authentic Messenger?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, please head on over to theauthenticmessenger.com. This website has only been about a year or two in making. It's finally up and running. Um, Thank you. Absolutely. I've been diving into other people's brands. So again, making sure that I knew what the Authentic Messenger was really important. And it's not a process that I was willing to rush.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy with what I've got so far. And again, we'll continue to evolve. You can also follow me on Instagram, The Authentic Messenger. That's where I post a lot of like client news. I actually recently did a Instagram live conversation about elevator pitches.
I listened to that earlier today. It was so good. Y'all should check that out.
Oh, thank you. And I ultimately, when things kind of give me an opportunity to do so, I want to make sure that I'm giving resources to people. I'm a teacher, like naturally, and I want people to be able to, again, before they get to the PR person, make sure all these branded things are in check. But what do you need to know to make sure that they're in check? Okay, so I want to be able to provide that for you. So I've done some beta testing already on what some of that information looks like. So just be on the lookout for it. You can also head on over to, like I said, the Authentic Messenger. And if you sign up for the newsletter, then you'll be able to kind of get first dibs on what's happening. And then I'm on Twitter because that's where all the media people are, at Authentic Keiona, because like I said earlier, the Authentic Messenger was not available.
Thank you so much, Key. It was a wonderful time chatting with you, and we'll see you next time you drop by the lounge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck to all you business owners who are listening.